Under the blistering, unforgiving midday sun, the massive, state-of-the-art automotive arena in the heart of the city was filled with the deafening, thunderous roar of high-octane engines and the chaotic clamor of thousands of elite spectators. There was absolutely no room to drop a single pin in the grandstands. Today, amidst the blaring electronic music and the arrogant, boastful slogans of the wealthiest racing tycoons, the sight of what stood right in the middle of the dust-choked arena made even the most seasoned, arrogant mechanics break into a cold, terrifying sweat. It was no ordinary machine, but rather a massive, terrifyingly complex experimental hypercar known only as the Apex Predator. Its sleek, black carbon fiber body was as hard as forged iron, and its twin-turbo engine growled and violently shook like a mechanical monster from the deepest pits of hell. The thick, acrid black smoke billowing continuously from its massive exhaust bore witness to the terrifying, untamed power trapped inside it. It was announced across the entire state, broadcasted on every major sports channel, that whoever could tame this mechanical beast, diagnose its critical, failing engine, and successfully pilot it around the deadly, twisting obstacle track would be awarded a grand prize of $1 million. This amount was so unimaginably huge that renowned engineers, chief mechanics, and champion racers from distant, wealthy cities had flown in on private jets just to get a single chance. Some had bodies built like linebackers, while others carried heavy steel briefcases filled with million-dollar diagnostic computer tools. The epic battle began. Amidst the deafening sounds of clapping and whistling from the elite crowd, the first master mechanic confidently stepped into the arena. He applied all his expensive software and brute physical force, but the engine simply backfired violently, tossing his tools into the air and engulfing him in a cloud of thick, suffocating black smoke. Then came the second challenger. He cleverly tried to bypass the main computer mainframe using a specialized tablet, but in the blink of an eye, the engine locked down completely, leaving him utterly humiliated in the dirt. Many arrogant heroes of the racing world came one after another, puffing their chests, but the result remained exactly the same every single time. Frustration, intense pain, and ultimate crushing humiliation. Gradually, the crowd's initial excitement began to turn into absolute creeping fear. People started whispering nervously to each other that this wasn't a car, it was a mechanical death trap, and provoking it meant inviting total, inescapable ruin. And in a dark, unnoticed corner of that terrified, elite crowd stood a skinny, frail 15-year-old boy named Leo. His faded denim jeans were patched up in several places with rough thread, and his small hands were permanently stained with dark, heavy engine grease. The leather on his worn-out, dirty sneakers was peeling off, taped together at the seams. But his bright blue eyes did not hold the paralyzing fear that was so clearly visible in everyone else. There was a strange, profound peace, a deep, unwavering focus. Leo's world was very, very different from this billionaire glamour. He made his meager, painful living by scavenging sharp scrap metal and broken, rusted car parts from the massive, dangerous dump yard on the outskirts of the city. His home, if it could even be called a home, was a rusted, leaking trailer in an old, run-down park on the absolute edge of town, where his severely sick mother was fighting a terrifying death at every single moment of the day. Due to a complete lack of expensive medicine, her severe, agonizing cough was getting progressively worse day by day, echoing terribly through their thin walls. Leo's father, who was once known as the county's most brilliant, legendary underdog mechanic, a man who could listen to an engine and literally know its soul, had tragically left this world in a horrifying car crash many years ago. But before leaving for heaven, he had given his young son an invaluable, priceless treasure: the rare, almost magical ability to deeply understand the complex minds of machines. In his early childhood, little Leo would watch his father in the grease-stained garage for hours on end. His father used to tell him with a warm smile that you have to win an engine with your heart and your ears, not with force and cold computers. When you look at the machine and listen to its rhythm without an ounce of fear, its mechanical anger will melt away on its own. Today, that very comforting voice was echoing loudly and clearly in Leo's ears. The experimental hypercar standing in the arena was still smoking, its engine sputtering with a terrifying, blistering heat. Leo took a deep, shaky breath. He didn't see an impossible, terrifying machine there, but the literal money for his dying mother's life-saving medical treatment. He didn't see a shiny $1 million, but a precious new breath of life for the only family he had left in this cruel world. Suddenly, the brave boy pushed his way through the wealthy, smelling of expensive cologne crowd and stepped boldly forward into the glaring stadium lights. When the people's sharp eyes fell on him, everyone was initially surprised into silence. Then, roars of cruel, mocking laughter erupted through the entire stadium like a shockwave. People pointed their manicured fingers, laughing hysterically that the trash-scavenging boy from the slums was going to fight the apex predator now. But Leo's eyes were fixed on only one thing, on that massive, black mechanical beast. A harsh voice called out from the elite crowd, mocking him, telling him to go back to the junkyard where trash belongs, warning him he would get his bones broken. But Leo didn't listen to anyone. He walked straight ahead with steady, determined steps and reached the very front of the VIP glass gallery, where the city's mayor and the competition's wealthy corporate sponsors were standing. Sitting there on a luxurious plush leather couch, wearing designer sunglasses and expensive silk, was Victoria Sterling, the incredibly wealthy daughter of the nation's most ruthless automotive oil baron. She was incredibly beautiful, highly educated, and utterly, blindly arrogant. There was a strange, condescending pride and a cruel curiosity in her sharp eyes. She was the one who had the actual announcement made, creating this impossible, dangerous challenge simply out of her own stubborn, privileged boredom. Leo stopped right in front of her. There wasn't the slightest, faintest tremble in his small voice. He had the steadfastness and immense presence of a towering mountain. He looked directly into the eyes of the wealthy heiress and stated clearly that he wanted a chance, that he could fix the engine and drive the car to victory. For a long, agonizing moment, the whole massive stadium went dead silent, as if time itself had completely stopped. Then, loud, arrogant, piercing laughter echoed from the VIP box. Victoria looked him up and down with absolute, unfiltered disgust. Her gaze stopped judgmentally on Leo's torn, dirty jeans, his grease-stained fingernails, and his taped-up, pathetic boots. She smiled faintly, a smirk of pure, toxic corporate arrogance. She picked up a golden microphone and her voice boomed across the entire arena, telling the boy that trash belongs in the junkyard, not in the driver's seat of $1 million masterpiece. The crowd roared with laughter again, feeding hungrily on the boy's public humiliation. The elite mechanics pointed and jeered loudly, telling him to go play with scrap metal in the mud. The emotional rhythm of the arena was meticulously designed to completely crush anyone's spirit and break their confidence. But Leo completely and utterly ignored the vicious mockery. He channeled the powerful, loving legacy of his late father. He stood in absolute, silent endurance, letting the wave of insults wash over him like water over a stone. He did not yell back in anger, he did not cry tears of shame, and he did not flinch away. He simply waited patiently for the cruel laughter to finally die down. Victoria, seeing that her harsh insults had absolutely no effect on the boy's calm, statuesque demeanor, felt a flash of deep, unwarranted irritation. She leaned forward over the glass railing, challenging him with a wicked gleam in her eye, stating that if he somehow managed to miraculously tame this impossible machine, she would personally hand him the $1 million right there. But if he failed, he would be permanently banned from every scrapyard in the county and forced to work for free as a janitor in her factories for the rest of his miserable life. Leo replied instantly, without blinking an eye, his voice echoing in the sudden, tense silence, declaring that the deal was done and the challenge was accepted. A massive uproar broke out in the crowd. People called him a crazy fool, saying he had come to commit social suicide just for the greed of the prize. But Leo didn't budge a single inch from his spot in the dirt. There was a stubborn, beautiful calmness on his young face. He knew deep in his soul that this wasn't just some racing spectacle for entertainment. It was his mother's absolute final lifeline. The voice of his heavenly father echoed inside him once more, reminding him that fear is a man's biggest, most devastating defeat. People were still laughing and whispering, but Leo's bright eyes were fixed only on the sputtering, angry car. The dark, terrifying night flashed vividly in Leo's mind when his mother had fainted on the cold, hard trailer floor while coughing violently, her face turning a terrifying shade of pale. Forget expensive, life-saving medicine, there wasn't even a basic, cheap painkiller in their entire empty house. He had been sitting outside in the cold dirt, crying helplessly, desperately wishing his dad were there to fix everything. When he opened his eyes now in the arena, he was no longer that scared, helpless, weeping boy. He had fully become his father's living, breathing legacy. The loud, blaring horn signaling the official start of the challenge sounded, vibrating through the ground. The elite, muscular mechanics stepped back in fear, shaking their heads in pity. The ultimate battle of pure brains and intuition was about to finally begin. Leo slowly stepped forward toward the smoking, terrifying vehicle. No rush, no aggressive, puffed-out chest posture, He didn't pull out a fancy laptop or a massive, heavy toolbox. He simply placed his bare, heavily grease-stained hands gently on the scorching hot carbon fiber hood. The massive crowd gasped in unison, fully expecting his hands to be horribly burned, but Leo remained perfectly, astonishingly still. He closed his eyes, completely blocking out the jeers, the loud music, and the overwhelming, suffocating pressure of the stadium. He slowly synchronized his own deep breathing with the erratic, violent, shaking heartbeat of the massive engine. He could feel its intense heat, its broken rhythm, its mechanical, frustrated anger. Until now, everyone had blindly fought the complex machine with brute force and expensive, useless programming. This poor boy was flowing around the problem like smooth water. Suddenly, the perfect opportunity came. He walked quietly to the side panel, reaching deep into the incredibly complex, burning hot wiring harness without even looking. He didn't force a single thing. He just adjusted a single hidden pressure valve and gently realigned a critical disconnected sensor using pure unadulterated intuition. His father's voice rang out again in his mind, telling him that when a machine is screaming in pain, don't scream back at it, just gently show it the right path. Leo gently twisted a hot bolt with his bare, calloused fingers, utilizing a grip as tight and unyielding as solid steel. Agonizing minutes began to pass in absolute silence. The engine's violent, terrifying shaking was now miraculously beginning to turn into a smooth, incredibly powerful hum. The thick, suffocating black smoke completely vanished into the air. The sound of heavy, rhythmic, perfect breathing from the twin turbos could be clearly heard, totally perfect and harmoniously in sync. Leo slowly and confidently climbed into the luxurious driver's seat. He didn't slam the gas pedal to show off. He gently, respectfully engaged the transmission. And then, something happened that absolutely no one in the wealthy, arrogant crowd had ever, in their wildest dreams, imagined. That massive, terrifying black monster slowly rolled forward, purring flawlessly like a tamed, obedient lion. Leo drove it flawlessly around the deadly, highly dangerous obstacle track, drifting gracefully around tight corners with a natural, breathtaking grace that completely defied all racing logic. The whole stadium went completely, utterly numb. 1 moment passed, 2 moments passed. Then the lead commentator screamed wildly into the microphone, his voice cracking with utter, mind-blowing disbelief, shouting that the scrap boy had actually done it, the engine was perfectly fixed, and the impossible track was conquered. Suddenly, the California sky violently shook with the deafening, explosive sound of a standing ovation. The mechanical beast that was acting like a terrifying messenger of death just a little while ago was now as calm and obedient as a quiet summer breeze. The terrifying fire of danger had completely gone out. The elite crowd's restraint completely broke. A massive, unstoppable wave of shock and unbridled joy swept through the arena. Elite mechanics were throwing their expensive hats high into the air, shouting loudly that it was unbelievable, that this ragged boy was an absolute, undisputed genius. Leo brought the gleaming hypercar to a remarkably smooth stop right in front of the VIP glass gallery. His small body was trembling slightly from the sheer, overwhelming adrenaline, his breathing erratic and heavy. But a beautiful, triumphant, victorious smile bloomed wonderfully on his dust-covered, dirty face. He looked up at the bright blue sky and whispered softly to himself that he did it. He finally made his dad proud. Suddenly, the heavy reality crashed back down, and he remembered his sick, dying mother. This incredible victory wasn't about the thunderous applause or the wealthy people finally clapping for him. It was a desperate victory for that one crucial, life-saving breath his mother desperately needed to survive the night. People started calling him a brilliant hero, rushing toward the track barriers. For the very first time, the arrogant elite saw him not as the worthless, trash-scavenging boy from the trailer park, but as a true, undeniable master of his craft. In the VIP gallery, Victoria Sterling slowly and unsteadily stood up from her luxurious leather couch. The extreme, blinding arrogance had completely vanished from her beautiful face. There was both profound, earth-shattering amazement and a strange, cold seriousness in her wide eyes. The ground literally seemed to slip from beneath her perfectly manicured feet. She slowly walked down the marble steps and stepped directly into the dirt arena, her expensive high heels clicking against the concrete. The roaring crowd quieted down instantly, respectfully parting ways for the billionaire heiress. She looked at the frail boy, then at the perfectly running hypercar in sheer disbelief. "You have all seen it with your own 2 eyes," she announced softly into her microphone. "This boy has made the totally impossible entirely possible." The massive crowd shouted in unison, loudly demanding that she immediately give him the grand prize, the $1 million he rightfully earned. Leo slowly stepped out of the car. His legs were shaking violently with exhaustion, but his inner resolve was as solid as a mountain rock. Victoria called him over, her face suddenly hardening into a corporate mask. She asked for his full name and his exact age. Leo answered, panting heavily, telling her his name and stating clearly that he was only 15 years old. Hearing this, a dark, nervous whispering started in the crowd again. Victoria's face became incredibly serious, a dark shadow of corporate greed and strict policy returning to her eyes. She took a deep, dramatic breath, stretching the rubber band of extreme tension to its absolute, agonizing limit. She stated loudly that a challenge is a challenge, but the strict letter of the law has its own unyielding place. Such a massive sum of corporate money simply cannot be given directly in cash or by check to a legal minor. Pin drop, suffocating silence descended on the massive stadium. Absolute, horrifying surprise and sheer terror showed vividly in Leo's eyes. He protested, his small voice breaking with panic, saying that he tamed the machine, that he won the race fair and square, and that everyone saw it happen. Victoria stayed quiet for an agonizing, torturous moment. Then she said coldly that yes, he undoubtedly won, and she wouldn't dare back down from her word. But according to strict federal banking laws, the money simply could not be handed to a 15-year-old boy. Restlessness and fierce anger spread like wildfire through the crowd. People shouted loudly that it was totally unfair, that the brave kid had risked his own life to win. Leo's grease-stained hands automatically clenched into tight, trembling fists. He felt as if the entire world had just violently collapsed on top of him. The bright, warm sun of hope that had just risen was brutally and instantly overshadowed by the dark, suffocating clouds of corporate legal loopholes. He looked at the wealthy heiress with tearful, utterly desperate eyes. It wasn't just about the silly money anymore. It was a terrifying, urgent question of his mother's literal life or death. There was an agonizing, heartbreaking plea in Leo's trembling voice. He dropped completely to his knees right there on the dusty track and begged her, sobbing, saying he didn't want the full $1 million, that he didn't care about being rich at all. He just begged her with folded hands to give him exactly enough so his dying mother could immediately get her life-saving hospital treatment. His pure words were so profoundly sincere, so full of raw human agony, that they violently pierced the hearts of every single person present in the arena. The entire atmosphere went completely, deadly quiet, the heavy weight of his unconditional love hanging tangibly in the air. Victoria Sterling looked closely down at the weeping, ragged boy on his knees. The wealthy heiress, who had spent her entire privileged life surrounded by greedy, lying billionaires and fake corporate smiles, had never once witnessed such pure, selfless, beautiful love. The boy's incredibly pure heart completely and utterly shattered her towering, fragile ego. The cold ice around her soul melted in a single, miraculous instant. There was absolutely no arrogance left in her eyes, only a profound, overwhelming respect and deep sorrow. The hot tears began to gather rapidly in her own eyes. She slowly stepped forward, completely ignoring the filthy dirt on the ground, and knelt right beside the ragged boy. She gently placed her soft hands on his trembling, frail shoulders and said softly, her voice cracking heavily with newfound emotion, that he had a very, very big heart, and that they would definitely find a way to fix this right now. She didn't call her ruthless lawyers to debate trust funds or useless paperwork. She knew precious time was rapidly running out. She immediately pulled out her diamond-encrusted phone and called the best, most expensive medical center in the entire state. She ordered a private, fully equipped medical helicopter to be sent to the rundown trailer park immediately, sparing no expense. She explicitly instructed the elite hospital administration that every single medical bill, every complex surgery, and every expensive medication for Leo's mother was to be fully, completely paid directly by her own personal accounts. When Leo heard this incredible news, he let out a loud, gut-wrenching sob of pure relief, his happy tears falling onto the race track. Deal, he whispered without a single second thought. He didn't want the cash, he just wanted his mother back. In that very miraculous moment, the importance of dollars completely changed for everyone watching. It wasn't about worthless paper notes or massive bank accounts anymore. It was about precious breath, about vibrant life, about ultimate beautiful humanity. A short while later, the deafening, hopeful sound of a medical helicopter echoed through the sky, landing swiftly near the rundown trailer park. Leo's mother was gently placed onto a modern stretcher by world-class professional paramedics. Leo sat quietly in the corner of the helicopter, holding his mother's cold hand tightly, refusing to let go for even a second. Hours later, in the pristine waiting room of the massive hospital in the city, a senior surgeon emerged with a warm, comforting smile, announcing that the difficult operation was completely successful and his mother was finally out of danger. Leo slumped to the floor, the crushing weight of the world finally lifted from his small shoulders. He cried tears of absolute profound joy, knowing his father's beautiful legacy had saved them all. Days went by, and his mother's health rapidly and miraculously improved. The boy who was once mocked as a worthless trash scavenger had walked away a true, undeniable hero, proving that pure skill and a clean heart can conquer the greatest of arrogant giants. Victoria Sterling eventually visited the hospital in plain, simple clothes, having learned the absolute greatest lesson of her entire life. She looked warmly at Leo and admitted that he didn't just fix that broken engine. He entirely fixed her broken, arrogant perspective on the world. This incredible story stands as a powerful, enduring reminder to never judge someone by their ragged clothes, and to never let extreme wealth blind you to basic human decency. The person you mock and mistreat today might just possess the very brilliance that leaves the entire world in stunned, reverent silence tomorrow. Always remember to stay kind, stay humble, and cherish the ones you love.